Thank you so much for tuning into the show, and welcome to Season 2 of the Audiobook Club with John York. The Audiobook Club, partnered with Pro Audio Voices, celebrates audiobooks, the amazing people and teams who make them happen, as well as the various talents behind storytelling. To learn more about Amplify and other opportunities to grow your sales, platform, and audience, head over to proaudiovoices.com and listen out for a short but informational advertisement within this episode. Let's start the show. Hello and welcome to the Audiobook Club. In this week's episode, we're so lucky to be joined by actor, voice actor, and audiobook narrator Mark Burghagen. Mark, it's such a joy to have you on the show. How are you today?
Thank you very much, John, for having me. This is exciting. What a great channel as well. I'm well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
You've just come back from New York, is that right?
I have just come back from New York. My family are very bored of hearing about it.
Well, I'd like to know more anyway.
Yeah, it was the APAC, the Audio Publishers Association conference over. It happened in New York this year. The last few years, it's been in. Online, because of COVID and all that stuff. But this was like the first time they got back, and there was like 700 people in what was a big room that didn't feel like it once crammed with that amount of people. It was an amazing experience, but gosh, it was like overwhelming and just a little bit too much at times, in a nice way. But first time everyone's come together in so long, there's a lot of hugging, and then unfortunately a lot of COVID after it.
Oh really?
Yeah, which I seem to be okay. I've been tested negative, so yeah.
I've got to say, I've post-COVID stuff, I feel really uneasy in massive sort of crowds at the moment. I've never been really good at that, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what it is. It's definitely got worse through COVID's lockdowns. Being on your own a lot, being in a booth a lot.
Yeah, well, that's it, isn't it? Because it's such, doing voiceover and stuff can be, especially if you're working from home, can be so isolating, and you spend a lot of time on your own, especially with audiobooks and stuff if you're not working with a director and engineer, etc. But even then, it's a really small team. So to go from that way of life to going into lots of people and lots of interaction socially, it can sort of be a little bit triggering in certain ways.
You're totally right. Yeah, absolutely. I notice that especially when I'm doing theatre shows. So as soon as you hit the rehearsal room, especially the first day, everybody's a bit like that. Everybody's like super hyped up because everybody's actually at home sitting doing most of the time, doing very isolating tasks, and then all of a sudden you're in the room again. I noticed that people couldn't look into one another's eyes actually during the first few weeks back in the room.
Really?
I had to sort of relearn that. Really fascinating, actually.
That is interesting. Yeah, because this whole thing with COVID, not to dwell on it too much, obviously, but it does sort of change the way that you view those situations. Because before, maybe you could be a little bit anxious, as everybody is in big situations like that. But now you have the added, I could get something from this. I could transfer that thing to my loved ones. It's like an added pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's. I think it's rewired a lot of nervous systems. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to start the show by just simply getting to know a little bit more about your background. Could you tell us, how you found yourself acting, voice acting, and just in this crazy creative world?
Yes. Where to start? Stop me. So I grew up in the middle of nowhere in rural central Germany, speaking both languages, and I don't know. I wanted to be everything. I wanted to be an archaeologist, a historian, a rock star, everything that a kid wants to do. And then I ended up studying church music first, sacred music in Germany, which is a big sort of set of studies. You're sort of following the footsteps of Johann Sebastian Bach. And it involves obviously organ playing, improvisation, piano playing, singing, conducting, choral conducting, Gregorian chant, all the rest of it. So that was my first sort of foundation of vocal stuff. And I've always been a very sort of audio orientated person. I should probably say I transitioned from female to male over a quarter of a century ago.
Yeah.
That's a long time ago. But voice and how it's been perceived by others, and how, what voice does to us as humans, has always been quite prominent for me in my whole journey.
Yeah.
So yeah, I studied church music to start with, then got a job in a cathedral choir in Truro in Cornwall. Sang countertenor there for a couple of years, I think, and then went on to York University to study to do an MA in vocal studies as well, early music mostly, historic vocal practice,
Mm.
and then decided actually I've always done acting on the side, and I always found I was a sort of more or less mediocre musician and a pretty good actor somehow. So I didn't want to be my main for my main job to be a bit mediocre and me having a wonderful hobby. I wanted to be the other way around. So it's good to have that added music sort of
Yeah.
experience, but acting it had to be. So about 12 years ago, I retrained and have been working in theatre mostly,
Yeah.
film, television a little bit, opera, ballet, on stage, and as a voice actor. Thankfully, my good friend Yvonne Morley, who's a voice coach, suggested, "Well, you speak two languages. Why don't you try to make a little bit of money with it?" So
Yeah.
the rest is history, as they say. So yeah, I've been working
Yeah.
as a voice actor for more or less the same amount of time as I've been working as an actor.
Yeah. That's fantastic. How did you find like York and England coming over from Germany? Was it fun? Was it a nice change, or did it take a little bit of time to get to used to? I don't know. Is York very different from that rural part of Germany?
Um, as always, I grew up with rose tinted glasses about the UK when I grew up in Germany, because I was craving for life and for arts
Mm.
and everything that I couldn't get in my rural place. Basically, I mustn't be unfair though. We had a wonderful theatre company in
Mm.
where I grew up, and they really were my hub, my creative hub. Really
Yeah.
caught me in many ways. But yeah, I came over with rose tinted glasses, loved everything about the UK, and especially Cornwall. I mean, you come to a very sort of historic Britain somehow
Yeah.
in Cornwall. Everything is a lot slower. People are very friendly. They've got a lot of time. There's a lot of cream teas and cakes, and you know what I'm talking about. So I loved that bit. And then coming to York was, okay. So that's what Britain is actually like in many
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah.
So I think I've sort of flipped. I sort of loved Britain, then hated it, loved Germany, and now I think I've sort of come to terms with, I would love these things to be here in this country, and I'd love to be uh,
Yes.
able to bring over the best things of this country to Germany. I think there should be some fusion going on.
Yeah, absolutely. On previous episodes, we've been talking about how it's so important for an actor, performer, an artist to build up many different experiences throughout their life to draw upon for their creative work. Has training as a classical musician and all those experiences that you've had, does that help you as an actor, drawing on those things from a previous life, shall we say, previous pursuits?
Totally, totally, totally. I would never even say uh anything that I've ever done was the wrong choice or anything like that.
Mm,
Everything that has happened so far in my life has
mm,
been all good, challenging in many, many ways, but all part of me, and I don't want to say that, push this away and that away. This is not
yeah,
me. It's certainly informed everything that I do, especially I love doing verse speaking as an actor. I love Shakespeare,
yeah,
and that's got so much to do with timing, with speaking with a sort of rhythmicality as well, without making it sound as though it's a sort of fake thing and it's just an art form. To connect that to myself and to my own life experiences, basically,
yeah.
while elevating it to a sort of artistic level, is something that I really, really enjoy.
Yeah. Well, I have more questions about that, if that's okay, about Shakespeare, because I know that you're incredibly passionate about Shakespeare and specifically taking historic characters back to their original homes. Could you tell us a little bit about The Sacred King, a project that I believe showcases, is a great example of this passion?
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. This was a project that came. on the back of doing the show Richard II, Shakespeare's Richard II. So yeah, we
Yeah,
took Shakespeare's Richard II to Pontefract Castle for the first time in history, because the final soliloquy, the final scene, is set historically set, and also in Shakespeare at Pontefract Castle. So
yeah,
he has his last thoughts, his last musings at in the dungeon at Pontefract, and the dungeon still exists, even though he was probably kept somewhere else.
mm,
But we shot it a few years later at Pontefract Castle, just that soliloquy, and it was such a privilege to just be there. I just,
yeah,
you know, you're an actor as well, so you know what it's like when you sit in a black box theater and you have to make everything up yourself in your mind for the minds of your audiences.
yeah,
With this project, everything was flipped on its head. The surroundings were making the performance, the
yeah,
acoustics, you know, we had water dripping down into pools of water, and all that is part of what that became basically. It's
yeah,
and I didn't have to, I didn't have to make something happen. Basically, it just all
yeah,
happened. There was a lot of sort of reverence in that cave
yeah,
somehow, in that dungeon, and everyone really enjoyed it.
yeah. That sounds fantastic. And as you were saying there, being in those surroundings must have just been incredible to perform as in the place where it was meant to be. Like, it must have just felt so right.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I get a lot of. I know it's probably a very geeky thing, but I get a lot of buzz out of going into historic places, like walking through Booth and Bar here, for example, in York,
Yeah.
and knowing that this gate has been there for 2,000 years, and people have been walking exactly through
Yeah.
these few meters of cobblestones.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just I get something out of this.
Oh, I know what you mean. I get exactly what you mean. It makes you feel a part of something, part of something bigger.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because I quite often, because we're so isolated as well, I just don't feel
Yeah.
like I'm part of society sometimes. But
Yeah.
history and connecting with these monuments somehow makes me feel connected to humanity, even more so than something modern, somehow, a podcast or a club.
I know exactly what you mean. A little bit of a vague question, so I do apologise in advance. But what is it about Shakespeare that draws you in as a performer?
Whoa, this is a question that I could probably answer for ages and probably still not get to the point. I love the fact that Shakespeare is actually for everyone. I know this has been said so many times and it's probably a little bit stale, but um it's about humanity, and it's become a massive trend to put political beliefs and political agendas onto plays and onto productions. And I have to say, I'm not a big fan of this. I don't think
Mm.
Shakespeare needs that, because Shakespeare is absolutely for everyone. Just as an example, there is a
Yeah.
line in Richard II, where he says, like seely beggars who sitting in the stocks refuge their shame that many have, and others must sit here, and in this sort thought they find a kind of ease, bearing their own mistakes on the backs of such as have before endured the like. I had to get behind that first, of course, as well. I need to
Yeah.
study this first, but it
Yeah.
basically means, isn't it wonderful when I'm feeling really bad to think about other people who've already felt bad for me, basically? So I feel
Yeah.
much better if I think about all the other people in the world who feel bad at the moment. It makes me feel better. I don't know why, but that's just how it happens.
Yeah.
This is something that Shakespeare has realized 400 years ago, and probably many before him. And the plays are just full of these nuggets where, once you get a little bit behind the old language and everything, once you
Mm.
study it a little bit, feels so familiar, and so,
Yeah.
and it goes beyond gender, beyond status, beyond everything, whether you've got money or not. This is just
Yeah.
humanity, and I think that
Yeah.
that is what draws me to Shakespeare. It's quite
Yeah.
often the final soliloquies of the characters,
Mm.
actually, that have this wrap up where you just find so many gold nuggets.
Yeah, absolutely, and I love that. I love the way that you explain that. A lot of our listeners are actually from across the pond over in the States and Canada. Now, of course, here in the UK and Europe and such, Shakespeare is, especially if you're an actor, you will come in contact with Shakespeare. You will definitely do something from Shakespeare's body of work. But in the US, it's not actually that common, and you'll often find actors seeking it out on their own terms if they're going to be sort of. Would you suggest that more folks from across, say in the States, for example, if they're wanting to, be an actor and go down that creative journey, do you think that Shakespeare is definitely worth that studying time, definitely worth getting your teeth into at least something from Shakespeare?
I think everyone in the world, actor or not, should
Mm.
study Shakespeare, even if it's just a soliloquy or a monologue or something like that. I
Mm.
think it benefits. It's like a piece of art, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
a lot of people know the Christmas oratorio. You can't. You should be listening to this. There are some nuggets of human history that are just that you just have to tap
Yeah.
into to feel, I don't know, part of
Yeah.
humanity somehow. And
Yeah.
Shakespeare is definitely on the menu. Yes, of course, for actors, absolutely, but
Yeah.
for everyone really, all over the world, from Japan, China, just we have to exchange these wonderful nuggets that we've got, that our societies have brought forth. Basically, I saw this amazing, amazing, amazing opera, Monteverdi's Orfeo, fused 50-50% with Indian classical music.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
I was so blown away by this. Opera North was doing that, and it's probably the best performance I've ever seen on stage. It
Wow.
was. If an alien had asked me, Mark, so what's your art like? I would have pointed to that.
Yeah.
It was something to be proud of. To be proud of.
That sounds really up my street.
Good, good,
Yeah.
good.
If Walls Could Talk, The Forgotten Story of Anne Fairfax, the script monologues written by none other than our mutual friend Paul Birch, fantastic playwright and writer, etc. Could you tell us a little bit about this project, how it came about, your experience with it, and what folks can enjoy when they take part and go and see this?
Yes, Paul. Paul is fantastic. He's such a wonderful writer. I think it was through Paul and through our mutual friend Tom Freer that Fairfax House in York, which is um, a lovely 18th century historic house,
Mm.
just behind Clifford's Tower. And unfortunately, Clifford's Tower always takes the credit for everything, and people then don't discover Fairfax House. Go and see it
Yeah.
if you're ever in York. It's really very charming. Um, so they were commissioning a set of videos about the story of the of Anne Fairfax, who
Mm.
owned the house, um, and of her life, basically. So they needed
Yeah.
three characters. One was her confessor, Father Bolton, and I was to voice him originally, and Anne and somebody else. I think Nathaniel Piggott. What a wonderful name! A baddie, basically, in the story.
That's a nice name.
I know. Piggott. Really spit that out as well. um, and so they filmed two of the characters, Anne and Piggott, and
Yeah.
they had Father Bolton as a voiceover, which I was doing. But they decided this year to uh, to film me as well. So there will be,
Mm.
I think, from May onwards, there will be an exhibition with the characters speaking to you or speaking to the audiences
Yeah.
about their stories, and it's a lovely concept. They're great scripts as well, and they're very relatable. The characters
Yeah.
guiding you through the house, and the house is set up a little bit. I don't know if you've ever been to the Dennis Severs house in London.
Oh no, I haven't. I
Oh,
haven't.
please go again. Another one. Are you based in London?
I'm based in York, just
Oh, you're
outside of
based in
York.
York.
I am. Yeah.
John York
Yeah.
is based in York.
I know, creative, isn't it? Yeah, my middle. I started narrating under John York, and then I just like to imagine that my middle name is Of, so it's John of York.
Lovely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Uh,
John Duke of York.
but yes, the dates for when folks can check that out is 29th of April to the 5th of November 2023. So yeah, definitely, it's on my list. Sounds fantastic.
Let's go together if you're in
Mm,
York.
let's just do it. You can get the behind the scenes, pass. I
That's
can't
right.
pass up on
Yeah, yeah. Or
that.
even a free pass. You never know.
Oh, there it's now. It's who you know. You were nominated last year for the One Voice Award, the Once Voice Awards, for an audio drama project. And I'd love to, may I ask you to expand on what that experience was like, what the project was, and just your overall thoughts on that.
Thank you. That was a really, well, a surprise for
Mm,
once to be nominated by the One Voice Awards. Was fantastic.
mm,
When the casting came about, I they were looking. So it was English heritage,
mm,
revamping, refurbishing Clifford's Tower, which is only a
mm.
few yards away from Fairfax House. But
Yeah,
Clifford's Tower and York Minster are the big sort of, well, as you know, the big sort of landmarks somehow, and or town marks, city marks
yeah,
in York. But Clifford's Tower was always a little bit disappointing somehow. They charged a lot of money. Then you hoisted yourself up those steps, those very, very steep steps, to only find this hollow tower at
yeah.
the top. And you've paid something like, I don't know, 12, £15 for it, only to see that and a little visitor center. So I
Yeah.
think it's been on their agenda for a long, long time. And finally, they got the funding and they got the time. So
Mm,
during COVID, Clifford's Tower was being revamped and made into
mm,
this, which I think very, very well done exhibition or museum, almost monument. And they were looking for 5 voices to tell the story of the tower.
mm,
And and I was cast as one of the voices, and one of the probably most prominent stories of the tower is the Jewish massacre in the
mm,
Middle Ages of about 100 Jewish families, and they committed suicide in the tower because they didn't want to convert to Christianity. And
mm,
my character was telling the story how his parents and sisters and brothers have
mm,
died during that tragedy. So basically, he was supposed to be a historic fiction character,
mm,
but it was just so intense and so I found the story so
mm.
moving that it just felt very close and very
Yeah.
uh just a lovely script and a lovely cause as well. And as yourself, um we work all around the world somehow as voice actors. It was so nice to give something back to the city as well,
Yeah.
to actually work here for a change.
Yeah.
And so I auditioned, did the recall audition, and got the job. And we recorded it. Wonderful team again. And last year was the opening
Mm.
in March, I think. And the voices are embedded in benches, in sort of
Wow.
concrete benches. So you sort of sit down on that bench, and you've got a speaker behind you, behind your
Yeah.
head, and you can go around the niches, the four or five niches. I don't know. Maybe it was 4 characters in the end. I don't know, 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And you walk around, and they're all from different parts of York, of
Yeah.
Clifford's Towers history.
Mm.
So mine was more the sort of Middle Ages thing. They're quite long scripts, actually. I don't know if people actually sit that long, especially for something as depressing as my story. But yeah, I was lucky to be
Yeah.
nominated for that. So
That's fantastic.
you get that yourself, I'm pretty sure. You get a script and you click with it straight away,
Yeah.
or you don't, and then you just have to work sometimes really hard to
Yeah.
make it work for you. And sometimes you just have to shrug your shoulders, send it off, and think, hey,
Yeah.
leave it up to whatever.
When dealing with material that can be very sort of hard to read and hard to, I imagine, even harder to perform and things like that, how are you at separating yourself from the material that you're working on? Because sometimes I find that if I'm narrating, I predominantly narrate audiobooks, and there's sometimes, some books that I've narrated that just stay with me, and often the tremendously sad ones, unfortunately, just stay, and I find myself just thinking over it. It could be months down the line, and suddenly I'll remember that story will come into my head. How are you with separating, your life as your proper life as you going about to your actor life, as it were, dealing in that character with that difficult, challenging material?
That's a really, really good question, John. And if you've got any tips on that, I'd definitely gobble them up, because I'm not
Yeah.
very good at that. If
Mm.
I'm honest, I do get very deep into my characters, and I often stay there, and that's probably
Yeah.
not a good thing. I do discover a lot about myself through working on characters, and often,
Mm.
like you said, it's the sad, it's the difficult stuff that stays. It must be a human nature sort of thing.
Mm.
Um, but most, even the most brilliant drama schools tell you everything about how to get into character, not how to get out of character.
Mm,
It's just a
yeah.
recent sort of thing that people realize, oh, actually, it might not be very good for people to stay in that, just to keep going on as Hamlet all the time. It's
Yeah.
not a pleasant life. So I don't know. I've just
Yeah.
over the last few months, I think I've sort of put in, I've sort of
Mm.
identified triggers for me, and I've deliberately tried to step out of my the professional life, because I'm
Yeah.
sure that's the same or very similar for all performers.
Mm.
Get gobbled up by this very, very easily.
Yeah.
It's our life, and I'm just slowly learning to put a
Mm.
little bit of a barrier, a bit of a distance between me and that, to, you know, to
Mm.
allow myself a holiday and stuff like
Yeah.
that, and not to. I tend to spend a third of my income on my job. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but it's true.
I know. Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's true.
Yeah. Speaking about that, because there is lots of things, especially if you're going into voiceover and things, there's so much investment that you need. Maybe you want to get coaching, and you want to, there's so much that needs to spend. That business side of this life, because you have the creative side. Not saying that business can't be creative, but just for the sake of this question, you have the creative side. You have the performance side. You have the skills. You have the acting skills and performance skills. But then, of course, you also need the business side of it. You need to promote yourself as a performer. You need to, put yourself in for opportunities and in a place where you can receive opportunities and that kind of thing, all that marketing and networking and whatever you. Like that business side of it, did that come easy for you? Was that is that a learning of, work in progress, that side of things? How are you with the business side of this life?
Absolutely horrifically bad. I've learned. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot, actually, not least through platforms like Gravy for the Brain. I'm sure
Mm,
you're familiar with them.
yeah,
Um, their knowledge and their business knowledge has been an immense help for me too. And I've just recently I've started sort of reading, because I've always struggled with finances and stuff like that, because I've
mm,
been spending so much on. It's a really tricky thing, and I used to spend way too much. If an acting agent tells you, and you know that, being in York as well, it's easy to get down to London. It's in under 2 hours, but it'll cost you about 100 and something pounds, £150 to go to an in-person casting. And
yeah,
since COVID, it's been better. The first round is usually a self-tape. The second round,
mm,
however, is an in-person. And some casting directors will say, "Hey, we're only doing in-person castings. Isn't that wonderful to have people in the room again?" And my bank account is already going. It's like,
yeah,
it's a really tricky thing. So I have just found, actually, and I wish somebody had taught me that at drama school, music college, and all the rest of it. People always say put back XYZ amount per month. And I've tried that, and it didn't work, because I don't get paid per month. I get
mm,
paid per project. So now I'm paying myself an agent fee of 20%, and that goes in the bank.
okay,
And that's so much easier. And that really helps. It's such an eye opener. This
yeah,
really little nugget of, I've learned that somewhere through a sort of money
yeah.
podcast or something like that.
Oh, that's a great. You don't mind if I steal that, do you?
No, of course not. Please spread it. Spread it to all
That,
freelancers who've been struggling
yeah.
with this same thing for.
Yeah, because it is difficult, as you say, you work a normal job, you get paid at the end of the month or whatever, however it works like that. For us, you can go months without getting paid for a project. I've gone 3-4 months without getting. I did a job at the start of the year. I only got paid last week for it. It's you're waiting for. You can wait for ages and going through different sets of people and stuff. And obviously, you can't say that to your rent or your mortgage or your bills. That leads me on to a kind of a similar topic, really, which is uncertainty. Because I mean, obviously, life is filled with uncertainty for everybody. But I think specifically for this type of life, this lifestyle that we lead, uncertainty can be incredibly daunting. And I know from personal experience with close friends of mine, it is the reason, it's a massive reason, if not the main reason, why people say, do you know what, this isn't worth it. I'm just going to go get a normal job, and I'm going to be a community, go in community theatre, get my kicks that way, and that's it. Because at least I'll know when things are coming in, which is, you can't argue with that. But I mean, how are you with uncertainty? Is that something that you've learned to deal with? Is it still a struggle? That idea of not really not knowing that 6 months down the line, I don't know what I'm going to be doing. Yeah.
I think it's a love-hate relationship, me and uncertainty.
Yeah.
I think it's I actually love the fact that I'm waking up on a Monday morning and I have no idea where this week is going to take me, unless
Yeah.
I've got a long job that I'm working on, an audiobook or something like that. But
Yeah.
so this is great in a way. I could be working in Tokyo on Saturday, or it's
Yeah.
as an actor for a commercial or something like that, which is
Yeah.
kind of great. At the same time, of course, especially the financial instability, that you
Mm.
just never quite know when the next project, and is it going to be well paid?
Mm.
Then there's always the same question, isn't it? Am I going to do it for that amount of money when I'm actually normally charging
Yeah.
this sort of stuff? And you have to constantly be on the ball, and that's draining, I think.
Yeah.
This is very, very draining. So again, I started over the last few weeks to actually book a holiday, like just a normal sort of holiday,
Yeah.
something that's predictable, that I know is going to be in 6 weeks' time. So just to balance things out a little bit, to
Yeah.
make life a little bit less
Yeah.
unpredictable in many ways,
Yeah.
make plans without overworking myself and going down the sort of burnout route, because I think
Yeah.
that's what was sort of about to happen for me, that I was struggling with
Mm.
job acquisition, both in terms of acting and voiceover. Agents are great, but they only get you so much of the actual work. If I only
Mm.
relied on agents, even multiple agents, I probably wouldn't be able to make a living
Mm.
anyway.
Mm.
But yeah, it's a sort of love-hate sort of thing. I don't know what it's like
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah, very much the same, because you have that freedom aspect of like, well, like, yeah, I mean, I could be doing anything, in a few weeks' time. Well, I could have, as I say, mostly I do audiobooks and stuff, so it's like I could be reading about anything. I could be working with anybody. I don't know, but then it's like, but what if it's nobody? Like, that's
I know.
that's the worry. But I think you mentioned there about burnout, and I think it's so important, because I mean, people say, have joked, like my friends and stuff who have, quote unquote real careers, working banks and things like that. And they all say, oh, you're never at work. You're never actually doing any, you're never doing like a hard day's graft, which isn't true. But I get what they're referring to, but it absolutely isn't true. But also it's like that idea of, well, because you were always looking for the next thing, you've always got that, what am I going to be doing next? What am I going to be doing next in your brain? You kind of never not at work, because it's always there. Like, you don't clock off at 5 p.m. It's just that your brain is always wired to that kind of. And I guess I was having a conversation with Elise Arsenault about the scarcity mindset versus like an abundance mindset, and I think that maybe I'm totally wrong, but I think the guys in the States, I think, are a little bit better than us over this side at that abundance mentality. I think a lot of us, or certainly the people I've come into contact with, we kind of always have that. Maybe it comes from a bit of a pessimistic outlook of our own mortality of when, so yeah, yeah. But what do you have any sort of thoughts on that kind of scarcity mindset versus abundance of I'll have enough, I'm not going to worry about it, to I need to keep on churning out these auditions and stuff.
I'm certainly in that hamster wheel. I think
Mm.
the Germans and British people are pretty similar in that sort of
Yeah.
pessimistic outlook. There never seems to
Yeah.
be enough. But actually, this 20% rule that I'm now having
Mm.
is putting me a lot more at ease.
Mm.
So if I know that there is a sort of financial bolster, because I think the angst is only coming from a financial sort of insecurity.
Yeah.
It's fine to not be working for a week or something like that, or a couple of weeks, or even a month, when I know that I can pay my rent, I can pay my studio, I can, I'm okay, and I can
Mm.
afford to do something different. I'm actually going to try this August to just spend a month in my garden, in my allotment.
Oh,
and
nice.
just see what happens.
Yeah.
And actually, during this Lent, I had the idea of not auditioning for anything.
Oh, that's a good one.
I know.
Giving up
Talking about
auditions.
angst. Could you
That's
do it, John? Could you do it?
I don't know. I don't. I gave up chocolate for Lent. So I think
Classic. Okay.
audition's fantastic.
And you know what? I've never been working so much in my life.
Wow.
It's this typical,
Yeah.
maybe that's the American sort of mindset, isn't it?
Well, that was the idea, and I don't know. Some people have like a kind of a cosmic idea. You know, it's the world is it'll work for me, which works for them, and whatever works for you works for you. That's fantastic. Yeah, I don't know. I think I always have that little bit of a fear. It's also, we mentioned rates earlier about should I take this job on when it's a little bit less than what I usually do, and that's another part of it as well because it's difficult to have the kind of confidence to say no, I'm worth this much when you may not have something else to replace it. I mean, it's fine if you're getting offered loads of stuff and you can pick the ones that you want to do, but if you don't, I always find that's a little bit, well, yeah, but I know, but what if I never work again and I need.
Which is never true. That's a funny thing, isn't it? No matter
Yeah,
how many times you might think that, the next thing
yeah,
does come along. And if you look at your I always like making a sort of little review of a year or so in
mm,
December. And yeah, I have been working all the time. It's been coming. And even if I
yeah,
haven't auditioned for anything, and
yeah,
yeah, it's a total. I just need to get a little bit better at this, I think. Just
yeah,
less hamstery,
yeah,
hamster wheelie, and more trusting. Therefore, a little
yeah.
calmer as well as a result.
You mentioned spending some time in your allotment. Just like gardening, getting out in the earth. Does that help with all of this? You know, connecting to that, of doing something that's totally for you, totally just for pure the delight of doing it.
Yes, I mean, I suppose acting is the pure delight of doing it as well.
Mm,
I love my job totally, but all of us start as an actor because it was a hobby which we really enjoyed, and so we
mm,
lose our hobby, and that's a really bad thing actually. So
mm,
it becomes a job, and you need another hobby, therefore. So I
yeah,
just put myself on the York allotments list, waiting list,
yeah,
and got an allotment, and our job is very uprooting. This is a very rooting job,
yeah.
uh, working in the soil and stuff like that.
Mm.
It also gives me a wonderful opportunity to pursue my DIY ambitions, to have a space for that as well. No, it's wonderful. I mean, just sitting outside with a cup of tea also, or a beer, or having
Yeah,
a barbecue or something like that is priceless. It's wonderful.
absolutely. So, what are the things? So, we mentioned getting out in the earth. When not acting on stage, screen, or in the booth, what else can we find you up to?
Like I said, I love doing
Mm.
DIY. So I've just done an adult learning class for carpentry, and so
Nice.
I built a table and stuff like that. That was
Yeah,
really, really fun. I love hiking. Um, just getting out in nature. Really, that's
yeah,
one of my biggest things. It's I don't actually like watching TV or stuff like that. I think that's been sort of
yeah.
killed off by working in the industry. I have actually tried to persuade myself that I need to watch more TV just to
Yeah,
know what's going on at least. I really have to force myself to sit down and watch a Netflix, and
yeah,
I don't know. I'm just too critical, and I'm just too, I don't know. I just
yeah,
see behind the scenery too quickly.
yeah.
And if that doesn't happen, if I'm totally drawn into a story, then I know it's very well done.
Mm. Yeah, I mean that's another conversation as well about how like working in a particular medium, and then if you consume that medium for pleasure, it's very difficult to switch off that part of your brain, isn't it? That doesn't. I mean, for me, it's always it's either like for audiobooks. I can hear every mistake. I can hear every pickup that's been inserted afterwards, and it drags me. There's nothing wrong with that. I get it happens, but it still drags me out of
Or
it.
somebody not having
Yeah,
researched the pronunciation of a
yeah,
place or a yeah, I know.
yeah. It's like you can kind of understand. I often think that people are a little bit harsh sometimes on reviews more than they need to be, but I can totally understand if because if you're from a place and you're listening to another person and they say it wrong, you go ooh, it
Yes.
just snaps it out.
I know. And it's crazy, isn't it, that quite often voices put you off as well. I love listening
Yeah,
to audiobooks. I'm not actually
yeah,
very good at sitting down with a book. I read every line like 5 times. I can't get into it. An
yeah,
audiobook, however, just skims over the stuff that I probably can't get my brain around.
yeah.
But yeah, listening to a voice that instantly puts me off somehow, and that's not the narrator's fault at all. They can't
Mm,
help it. But it's funny how we have preferences as well, and
yeah.
or way people, the way that people pronounce things or go
Yeah.
about the different characters, or it's
Yeah.
crazy, isn't it?
It is. It is, and I want to. That leads me on to two separate questions. So I'll ask one first about talking about character, about approaching character, and then we'll just go back to audiobooks real quick, if that's okay. You've voiced iconic characters: Sherlock Holmes, Frankenstein, Bilbo. When approaching a character that is as much loved as those mentioned, like, what's your process for finding a voice for them? Like, do you have previous adaptations in the brain, or are you making them, fully your own? Like, what's your way of, how do you approach a character such as those mentioned?
I sometimes don't know the films, for example, very well.
Mm,
So, for example, I've never seen the Hobbit films.
mm,
So, so I suppose the jury's out. So I can do whatever I want with Bilbo, for example. I don't need to
mm,
give him. I quite like not giving people a sort of wildly over the top character voice somehow. It's more the
yeah.
sentiment that's in the
Mm,
for example, I did remember the Frankenstein, the Boris Karloff movie, which I watched in German actually. But there was none of the stuff that I encountered in the books. This wonderful monologue, actually, that the monster has. I don't know if you remember the book, because I'd never read it
mm,
before I did the audiobook. Um, and it's beautiful. So his sort of
yeah.
slightly gruff voice sort of got a little bit more humane in a way, and he was able to relay,
Yeah.
information that I I don't know. I don't like over the top somehow for my audiobooks or for my characters, unless it's a
Mm,
wildly sort of Victorian old lady or something like that. But I just love realism, and in a way, it
mm,
doesn't then matter so much what the voice sounds like. I just want the truth behind that, and I think the monster from Frankenstein is quite a good example of that. That you start off with a sort of character voice somehow, but then all of a sudden you get surprised. Gosh, that book is a lot deeper than I thought it actually ever was.
mm,
And then I can afford myself a bit more mark in this
yeah.
um, to bring out the truth. I don't know. What about you? How do you tackle?
I don't know. I think I kind of try and get a feel of what they're after for the project first. I think, yeah, and it sort of depends. I mean, I do mostly, most of the stuff that I do is kind of like YA adventure. Like I just done a Never Never by Serena Valentino for Disney, which is their origin for Captain Hook. Now, obviously, you think like Peter Pan, Captain Hook, that's all out there, but for this was a much darker story, and he was much more real, And then this book is just about him as a younger man, and so that was a lot more sort of downplayed. That was a lot more emotion filled, really, and stuff. So yeah, that was probably the biggest experience I had with tackling a character that had previous adaptations. So I kind of tried to make him my own in the style that they were wanting, that Disney were wanting. But then you had like Mr. Smee, who has like a very specific voice, and then they said, just go for it, just do your own interpretation of him, but just sort of take that idea, try and do like an impersonation, but then make it you, and then meet in so I did that, and that was it was fulfilling and then scary, because that was still only the experience I've had where listeners really, really cared for that piece of content before they heard your version of it.
Yeah, yes.
Um, and that terrified me because they will let you know.
Yeah, that is true. Yes, they
you know,
will. And there's nothing you can do about it, I suppose. It's
yeah.
I because I'm a massive, massive fan of the Lord of the Rings books.
Mm,
That I grew up with this stuff, and it helped me through, teenagehood and everything else. It was very, very important to me, and still is
yeah.
in a way. And I just couldn't bring myself watching the films because
Mm.
they were visual stuff is so powerful. It just overlays all the stuff that you, with your life experience as the person you are, have created in your own mind. I know where
Yes.
people are sitting when they're talking. Frodo
Yeah.
sits on the left, Sam sits across the book.
Yeah.
And we all have this miniature landscape. I think when we read a book, um, and it's not so much with audiobooks. I think it's the visuals that really kill things for
Yeah.
individuals. And I'm not saying that the films are bad or anything like that. I'm sure there's a lot of hard blood that went into them,
Mm.
but I just can't bring myself
Mm.
to 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 kill off my own imagination. I think
Yeah.
audiobooks are slightly different, because you can still have these images in your head.
I know exactly what you mean. And I think sometimes is you're right, you don't want to this kind of feel more personal to you. And it's like I'm happy to just you do you enjoy the films and that's amazing. I'm gonna sit with my story and be happy with it being how I see it.
But you
Um
wouldn't believe, as a modern
yeah.
person, how difficult it is to escape those visuals. The
Mm,
posters. I remember those posters were everywhere. It was all
mm,
all on the media. Anywhere you went, everywhere you went. And still, to this day, that's the case. You can't
yeah.
escape it. It's really
Mm,
brutal, actually, in many ways.
yeah.
How much marketing can actually destroy
Mm,
people's sort of own stories and own
yeah.
imaginations. I didn't
Yeah.
mean to, I didn't mean
No,
to
no,
sound so dark.
there's no. I totally get what you're saying, and it's kind of like it kind of this goes back to what we were saying about the business side of this work is you do have to put yourself out there and you do have to promote. People are saying, oh yeah, are you on TikTok? Are you on Instagram? Are you posting about your projects and stuff? Like, how are you with that? Because I mean that to me, and this is just my personal experience, I find that I hate doing it. I just can't stand it, and it's nice chatting with friends, and I like posting pictures of me if I go out to if I go for a nice walk with my partner and we take a picture and stuff. That's nice. I don't mind doing that. It's just with when it's like you promoting projects and project after project after project, and it just kind of sucks the kind of joy out of it.
Totally there with you. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It just becomes this sort of exercise, isn't it?
Yeah,
Okay, what hashtags am I going to use?
yeah,
And by the time I've labored over this tweet or whatever it is,
yeah,
I sort of feel, this event has already been and gone. Should
yeah.
I post it in the first place? No, nobody's interested in that. So I've wasted sort of half an hour of my life and
Yes.
and then decide, discard. Nobody's interested.
It's difficult, but I totally get because we're all fighting for somebody's attention, and there's a million other things that are going to take that attention away. And I mean that's just the nature of this world. You want someone to consume something, then you have to take their attention away from somebody else, and you have to persuade them to do it. And yeah, I just think it's a shame.
Totally. I know. Where's this world gone? I mean, this is one of the things that I'm planning to do eventually, to get somebody to look after my social media account,
Mm,
really, to create content and all the rest of it. I know it's necessary. It's a necessary evil at the moment, but
mm,
I just find it very, very draining. It's just
mm,
stupidly draining, actually. I don't know why, but
mm,
it's never been my sort of thing.
mm.
Really have to
Yeah.
force myself. It's a real flogging.
What do you when you first started narrating audiobooks, what was there like an area that you found most challenging, perhaps that you didn't imagine would be that challenging or a challenge when you first started?
Oh God, yes, absolutely. Mouth clicks and noises and it's fairly well insulated here, but it's
Yeah.
uh, the RAF flying over York, somebody mowing the lawn during the summer, and having to stop every time, and then you have to stop and start and stop and start and stop and start, and then
Yeah.
edit it out, and all
Yeah.
this stuff that goes into recording audiobooks that I never thought.
Mm.
I thought somebody sits there with a book in front of a microphone and just reads it and then cashes in a lot of money for it. This is absolutely not the case. Not only is audiobook the worst paid in the
Yeah.
industry, in
Yeah.
audio industry, but also, gosh, it's hours and hours and hours of
Mm.
work. And these mouth clicks can really, really do my head in. It's
Yeah.
incredible. Even though I've got the RX 10 now, which takes out a lot.
Mm.
But yeah, it's a And I hear them all the time when I hear interviews of people,
Yeah.
mouth clicks. Terrible.
It's just, yeah, it's just one of those things that once you notice it, it's so hard to switch off. Like I've been in places where I've went to, seeing some talks and things, and before we had a few cheeky gin and tonics, and I was just at that kind of nice relaxed level, and then I could still like, the person with the microphone, and you're like, even now, like, it's just no good.
Terrible, isn't it? Yeah, I know, I know.
Yeah.
I have had a, actually, that I've been trying to narrate stuff, having had a half bottle of red wine, and it just didn't work very well anymore. It just, I thought it was an experiment. I'll never
Yeah.
repeat that ever again. Maybe for the editing stage of
Yeah.
things, but it was not a good
Yeah.
one.
It's funny what this work does to people. I have to laugh because at the conference that I was at in this over the States this past week, the room really wasn't well sort of suited for that many people inside, right? So it was super loud and everything, ears ringing and all that sort of stuff. But it just made me laugh because you'd never find a room full of people who could more tell you what was wrong with the acoustics of that room. The general public may just say, "Oh, it's loud in there," but it was because that wall there bounces that off there, and then it goes.
So true, so true. Yes. Oh God, yeah, no, I can imagine that 800 or whatever people in
Yeah,
a room, and then everybody working in the voice industry as well, where they love
yeah,
projecting and hearing their own voice quite often. It's, I know, even at the Graver for the Brain, I don't know how many people were there last year at the conference, at the awards conference.
yeah.
It was also, quite clearly a room full of people working in voice. It was so noisy. I've actually started carrying earplugs around with me
Oh, really?
because can't,
Yeah,
I just can't. I think it's a post-COVID thing again.
yeah,
I've always struggled with sort of rooms with loud noises. But yeah,
yeah.
I'm earplugs in.
I don't blame you. A weird question, and this may not be your experience at all. So please don't feel free to humour me on it if it's not, because it may be nonsense. I was at a voiceover event ages ago, and I ran into a very nice lady who was do you know in Primark where there's a cashier number 4, please?
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
that was her. That was her recording, and ever since like I paired it up, like I sort of said, oh yeah, that's a real thing. That's a real sort of job. I can't go anywhere without hearing any sort of announcement and thinking, could it be mean?
That's brilliant. No, I love that. Who is it who does the underground? Yeah, she's on
Yeah,
SoundCloud as well, and I think she's done a few interviews as well.
yeah,
What it's like to be the voice of the underground.
yeah,
Uh, It's fantastic. It's just yes, of course. I mean, you could be
yeah.
the next yeah, M&S checkout.
don't
Leader
don't
checkout.
don't tease me. That'd be my dream.
Mine too. It's great. I think what a wonderful thing. I don't know, do you get royalties every time they play that?
Oh, I'm not
Must be
sure.
rolling in it if you
Yeah, well,
one of those.
every time someone joins the queue.
That would be incredible. It must be a buyout, but maybe a good one.
Yeah, one would hope. But the gravy for the brain, going to an event like that with I mean, that must have been really cool, like, hearing so many people, and that's the guy from the X Factor. That's the guy from the
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, they have quite a lot of caliber there.
yeah,
A lot of, yeah, Peter Dixon, obviously,
yeah,
who did a wonderful conferencier that evening at the awards. It's so nice to be in a room full of pros who know exactly what they're doing.
yeah,
It's fantastic and really nice, genuine people.
mm,
Um, I think because the voice industry is a lot larger. There are more job opportunities for fewer people as opposed to acting, where there are fewer job opportunities for a lot of people wanting to do
yeah,
all the same stuff. So I found that there's less elbows in the room and more genuine.
yeah,
Good for you that you're doing this. I do this, which is totally different, and
yeah,
there seems to be a lot more.
mm,
It's a bit more relaxed, I think. I don't know
yeah.
what your
Yeah, very much the same, because there's not that many people trying to be audiobook narrators, for for all the reasons that it is. But no, it's a lovely job, and the community there is so golden. Like I said, I was telling my family, like, just this. I went and met in New York. I went and hung out with so many people that I've met through the podcast, through Twitter, and through Instagram and stuff. And I didn't realize it was possible to feel more like so at home, thousands of miles away from your actual home. Like, these people take such good care of you. They're so nice, and they genuinely want the best for you. Because I think, as you say, with the job is, you know, if my friend Jess Nahikian, who was on the show a couple of weeks ago, we met up and hung out and stuff. What they get cast as, what they get, the books that they get, I'm never gonna get. Why should there be any form of competitiveness between us? You know, it was just you can just be happy for each other and want each other to succeed. And would you say that in, you know, more kind of like screen and stage performance acting, would you say it is a lot more competitive?
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think this is just due to the numbers, really. It's the numbers of actors that there are, and a lot of colleges, universities are all churning out more and more and more and more actors because it's a great income. Everybody wants to be an actor. And there are fewer jobs. There are just, unless you produce your own stuff, or if you're happy to be a role player or do more corporate things or commercials. But the juicy stuff, the feature films, the National Theatre stage productions, the Globe, the RSC, all the rest of it, there are just not enough jobs. And castings go through trends as well. So, you know, at the moment, this group of people might be really trendy to cast, and then next year there might be another group. You know, it's as much as I love acting, I find the industry very, very difficult to navigate. And it's got nothing to do with, I don't know, that I don't want other people to succeed. On the contrary, I would love to be a much more open and genuine and caring environment, as I'm seeing the voice industry.
Yeah.
Where people are just very, happily saying, you know, great for you that you got this. I would never get that. And that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, exactly. It's lovely. With putting what we said about social media aside before, where's the best place for people to keep up with you?
With me? Oh, that's a good point. I need to get better at this, John. You just spelled it out for me. I think Twitter and Facebook are probably the I mean, I can always be reached via my website, Mark Burghagen, or burghagen.com. But other than that, Twitter, absolutely. Facebook. I don't know, Instagram seems to sort of reject me all the time. So I don't know what I'm doing wrong. So I still haven't got an account, or not anymore. But Twitter, Facebook, all good. There is an email address as well. So please get in touch. That would be wonderful.
Fantastic. So I'd love to end the show by simply asking if you have any upcoming projects, anything in the future that you're excited about that we can look forward to and celebrate.
One thing that I've signed an NDA for.
Okay. Fair enough.
which I'm really excited about. But other than that, I've just finished a couple of audiobooks. I'm waiting for a couple more to come in. This is the exciting bit. You just never know. It's been really busy over the last 3 weeks or so, unusually busy.
Yeah.
Probably all due to me not doing any castings. So, I look forward to whatever.
That's fantastic. And we look forward to it too. Well, that just brings us about to a close for this episode of the Audiobook Club. All links to Mark's social media and website will be linked in the show notes. Thank you so much for tuning in, and of course another huge thank you to you, Mark. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was really fun.
Frustrated by the royalty rates for your audiobook? Annoyed that when the digital distributors say 70% royalties, they actually mean 70% of 50% or 80% of 70%, neither of which is an actual 70%. Wishing there was a way to cut out the middleman? Yet, you want your audiobook listeners to have a smooth and positive experience, and a direct download sale from your website won't deliver that. We at Pro Audio Voices hear you. Out of our commitment to our author clients, we've created Amplify, a program that provides an actual 65% of the sales price that you set that gives you access to your customers' names and emails so you can reconnect with them and keeps you in the driver's seat. Check it out at proaudiovoices.com. You'll find Amplify in the marketing menu.